The sky over Warsaw on the morning of September 1st, 1939, was a deceptive shade of blue. Children walked to school, their laughter echoing in the streets. Shopkeepers swept their stoops, greeting neighbors. It was a day like any other, a fragile portrait of peace painted over a canvas of simmering tension. But on the border, just miles away, the roar of engines and the clatter of tank treads were about to tear that portrait to shreds. In the pre-dawn darkness, German forces were massing, not just for a border skirmish, but for a new kind of war, a war of speed, terror, and total annihilation. This wasn't just an invasion. It was the birth of the Blitzkrieg. The world was about to hold its breath as the first shots of what would become the most devastating conflict in human history were fired. This is the story of how one nation's desperate fight for survival became the flashpoint for the Second World War. Before the first shell fell, the invasion of Poland began with a lie. On the evening of August 31st, a small group of SS operatives, dressed in Polish army uniforms, stormed a German radio station in the border town of Gliwice. They broadcast a short, anti-German message in Polish, fired a few shots into the air, and left behind the body of a prisoner, dressed in a Polish uniform as proof of the attack. Adolf Hitler now had his excuse. To the German people and the world, he would claim this was a defensive action, a response to Polish aggression. In reality, it was a meticulously staged deception, the final piece of a puzzle he had been assembling for years. The plan, codenamed Fall Weiss or Case White, was ready. It was a strategy built on a revolutionary concept, overwhelming force delivered with lightning speed. The objective wasn't just to defeat the Polish army, but to obliterate it before it could even fully mobilize. At 4:45 a.m. on September 1st, the aging German battleship Schleswig-Holstein, which had arrived in the port of Danzig days earlier on a supposed goodwill visit, unleashed a thunderous barrage. Its massive guns targeted the Polish military transit depot on the Westerplatte Peninsula. The Polish garrison, numbering fewer than 200 men, was expected to hold out for just 12 hours. In an incredible act of defiance, they would resist for 7 days, a symbol of the fierce, but ultimately doomed, resistance that would define the September campaign. Simultaneously, all along the 1,750-mile border, 1.5 million German soldiers poured into Poland. They were organized into two massive army groups. Army Group North under Fedor von Bock struck from Pomerania and East Prussia, aiming to cut off the Polish corridor. Army Group South, commanded by Gerd von Rundstedt, launched the main assault from Silesia and Slovakia, driving towards the industrial heartland and the capital, Warsaw. The Polish military, while brave and determined, was tragically outmatched. They were a force caught between two eras. Their strategy relied on the lessons of World War I, a defense based on holding a long frontier, hoping to trade space for time until their allies, Britain and France, could intervene. They possessed over 800,000 soldiers, a respectable number, but their equipment was largely obsolete. The famous image of Polish cavalry charging German tanks, while mostly a myth born from a single misinterpreted skirmish, captured a kernel of truth. Poland was fighting a 1939 war with a 1918 mindset and equipment. Their air force, though boasting some skilled pilots, was outnumbered and its planes were inferior. Many were destroyed on the ground in the opening hours of the Luftwaffe's onslaught. The German war machine, in stark contrast, was the most modern in the world. The Wehrmacht combined its forces in a symphony of destruction. Luftwaffe bombers and Stuka dive bombers acted as flying artillery, terrorizing troops and civilians alike, shattering communications and creating chaos. Following closely behind were the Panzer Division's fast-moving armored spearheads that bypassed strong points, punched deep into the Polish rear, and encircled vast formations of Polish troops. The infantry followed, mopping up the pockets of resistance left behind. This was Blitzkrieg, Lightning War, in its terrifying debut. Polish forces found themselves fighting on two fronts, caught in a massive pincer movement. The speed of the German advance was shocking. Communications broke down. Units were cut off, surrounded, and destroyed before they even knew the main battle lines had collapsed. The Polish High Command, led by Marshal Edward Ryd-Smigły, struggled to react to a war that moved faster than their ability to issue orders. They had placed too much faith in their Western allies. On September 3rd, Britain and France, honoring their treaty obligations, declared war on Germany. For the beleaguered Poles, it was a moment of desperate hope. They expected French armies to pour across the Rhine, forcing Hitler to divert troops from the east. They expected British bombers to strike German cities. But the help never came. The Western Front fell into a strange, quiet period that journalists would dub the phony war. While Poland bled, France and Britain mobilized slowly, content to stand behind their fortifications. By the second week, the situation was hopeless. The German pincers were closing around Warsaw. The Polish government and high command were forced to flee the capital, moving southeast towards the Romanian border. But the final, devastating blow was yet to come. On September 17th, acting on a secret protocol in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact signed just weeks earlier, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Joseph Stalin, Hitler's supposed ideological archenemy, sent the Red Army to claim his share of the spoils. Over 800,000 Soviet troops surged into Poland's eastern territories, meeting minimal resistance from a military already shattered by the German onslaught. For the Polish soldiers and civilians, this was the ultimate betrayal. The Polish government crossed into Romania, where they were interned, but they would eventually form a government in exile that continued the fight. Warsaw, the proud capital, refused to surrender. For 3 weeks, under constant bombardment from the air and relentless artillery fire, its citizens and garrison mounted a heroic defense. They dug trenches in parks and barricaded streets with overturned trams, but courage alone could not stop the shells and bombs. With no food, no water, and dwindling ammunition, the city surrendered on September 28th, the last major Polish unit. Fighting near the town of Koch laid down its arms on October 6th. The September campaign was over. In just over a month, the world's fifth-largest army had been annihilated. Poland had ceased to exist as an independent state, partitioned between Germany and the Soviet Union. The human cost was immense. Poland suffered over 200,000 military casualties and hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths. The invasion marked the beginning of a brutal occupation, where both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union would commit horrific atrocities. For the rest of the world, the swift fall of Poland was a terrifying wake-up call. It demonstrated the lethal effectiveness of Germany's new way of war and the catastrophic failure of Allied strategy. The phony war in the West would soon end, and the lightning that had struck Poland would soon be unleashed upon France and the rest of Europe. The first chapter of World War II had been written in Polish blood, a grim prelude to the darkness that would engulf the globe for the next 6 years. Thank you for watching. If you found this history compelling, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the pivotal moments of our past. Your support helps us continue telling these important stories. We'll see you in the next one.